All right. What is up, everybody? Happy Monday. Welcome to WMMA Mania. This is episode 21. I am your host, as always, Drake Riggs, here to bring you all the weekly happenings in the world of mixed martial arts when it comes to the ladies specifically. You know the drill. We got UFC Long Island to talk about this week. Three very interesting fights and developments, results, you name it. Good stuff there. We got a loaded week ahead of us with Invicta back on the docket in Colorado this week, so that's very exciting. Invicta FC 48, Bellator 283 giving us a fight, and then UFC is back in London with just two, but there's plenty to talk about. Some good news, some wild news in terms of weirdness, but yeah, a lot going on as always. Bit of a scramble. You love to see it. So thanks so much for tuning in, everybody, whether it's your first time or you're a reoccurring user. Please hit that like button if you could, share, subscribe, hit the notification. That stuff really helps us out a whole lot here at MMA Mania. Just a simple click. Appreciate it greatly. And of course, follow us on all the platforms imaginable too, and then go directly to the website for all your MMA needs. That is always a possibility. You don't have to, but again, would appreciate it greatly. So, how are we doing today, you guys? I am fairly exhausted, but what else is new? That just seems like a reoccurring theme these days, doesn't it? So, hanging in there as best as I can in this wild world. So, James says, BTL King and Jed's father maybe told Jed to stop eating all the pies, then he might have a chance next time. All right. Well, yes, the champ is still here, by the way, between the links last week. Another W. Not surprised. Closer this time. It was the closest one so far with the fan votes. So I was a little bit worried there. I was a little bit nervous. As Rain says, Drake's the champ. Jed is just a fan. Very true. And should be having a title defense this week as well against Mr. Mike Heck, as I made the call out at the end of the show. So that should be on this week's episode, but we have yet to confirm it, book it. But I called my shots. I want the man, the Boston man, to change things up a little bit. So that'll be fun. And Rue says, Jed still thinks he cheated, but the real cheater was Jed. How did the poll go from 65 to Drake, then fall 55? I don't know. Maybe I slowed down as the show went on. I don't know. You guys tell me. Did my points get worse? Maybe I did. I slowed down the stretch. Started off hot, but the end was not as good as it could have been. Who knows? And what is up, Jin? Good to see you. Alvin, last week's event taught us the value of being tolerant of others and not judging someone just because they are different. We should not hate what we don't understand and treat others with respect. Exactly. That is well put, Alvin. Appreciate you as always. Jimmy is here. The champ of BTL is back, and his name is Drake Riggs, 3-0 this year and cannot be stopped. That is true. I am undefeated this year, aren't I? I like that. Thank you for pointing that out, Jimmy. And I mean, my record, we all know, should be better than it is. I do agree that I should have the one loss. I totally choked in our third match last year, because I did 3 last year and I've done 3 this year. So I should be 5-1? That's what I should be. I'm fully fine with accepting the loss in that original trilogy bout. But yeah. And Makoto, good to see you as well. Yep, the champ. Very nice. Oh, all you guys are so kind. Ghost Drake is the BTL champ while Jets. Okay, well, we don't need to be insulting like that. I get it. All fun and games again, but we're getting personal here. My goodness. James says, I changed my opinion on this card just to support Drake on BTL. I did see that. Appreciate it, James. And hey, UFC Long Island, what I tell you was pretty damn good. All of these shows the UFC has been doing where they're back on the road have been pretty gosh darn good. So at least, I mean, maybe some haven't. But I mean, UFC Austin comes to mind. Then obviously this one was very good. Columbus was all right, but I didn't think it was terrible from what I remember. But it's nice to see things back going in. Jid says, Mike Heck ain't winning. I think I might have bit off more than I could chew with Mike. We'll see. He's obviously been around. He hasn't done much of the competition. He's usually the guy in charge. I mean, he literally made the show going back to before MMA fighting. So I'm up against my stiffest challenge yet for sure, but I knew what I was in for. And Rue says I was at 65 at the start. So, all right, well, see, maybe it was too quick. I must have slowed down for sure. As a Ghost says, I should be 6-0 if fan voting was a thing. That is a good point. I probably would be undefeated fully if we started off that way in the first 3. So new year though, so that's how it goes. But anyway, we will get into UFC Long Island now, as my stuff is being very delayed today. So I apologize, you guys. I'm sure the quality is also shit because I'm fucking still dealing with this and don't know how much longer it will continue, but we'll push through it. Very frustrating, but we're going to start things off talking about the co-main event, which Amanda Lemos got back into the win column, rebounding off her first strawweight loss. Second loss of her career against Jessica Andrade, as she submitted the karate hottie, the former Invicta atomweight champion, Michelle Watterson. What Gomez now is what she's going. She's got the hyphen, the abbreviation there, not abbreviation, the hyphen. But it was a second round guillotine submission at 148. Very, very impressive stuff here from Amanda Lemos. Unsurprisingly, I think we knew if someone was going to get a finish in this one, it was her. And my goodness, she has been just a dangerous individual at strawweight. And admittedly, the first round of this fight was pretty uneventful. It was kind of just Watterson keeping Lemos away from her at distance, kind of throwing her kicks out there, as she kind of tends to do since she's gotten to the UFC, at least in this last half of her career for sure. So I was kind of just a patient waiting game until like the last minute. I thought the scrambles and grappling exchange there at the end of the first round was very fun. That was good to see. And then in the second round, though, Lemos really adapted well, made some change-ups and just kind of started coming after Watterson and was landing really good. Kind of some just looping shots out there, nothing too like, fancy, just throwing her hooks kind of blindly. And they were working for the most part, moving Watterson out of direction and pace. And then, there was that great takedown defense when she decided to change things up, Watterson, that is, with the single. And Lemos defended well and then jumped on the neck. And I mean, we've seen Watterson submitted via a guillotine before. That was how she lost the Invicta title, right, to Erica Tiburcio back in the day. So against somebody like Lemos, got to protect the neck, as Dan Tom would say. So yeah, this was I think it was a fine performance from Lemos. Exactly what she needed. Going out there, getting a finish to get back in the win column. Not bad at all. Again, first round was kind of just her being patient and cautious, I suppose, but made some great adjustments and just kind of realized, all right, I can just go after her in the second round. That's what she did, and it paid off perfectly, exactly how you'd want it to. So still a very dangerous individual in the division. Doesn't really tell us too much about her maybe fixing her own pressure issues or, how she gets back to the cage and whatnot, because Watterson was never, ever going to do that. But I mean, that just is what it is, right? She did the best with what she was working with, and it paid off. So Centro says this was not an eventful fight until the finish. That was my opinion. Not sure what you thought, Drake. Well, just shared. So Centro, there you go. Yeah, like I said, first round was not too great. I enjoyed the scramble at the end, like I said. Ghost is not impressed until the front headlock snap down to guillotine, but it turns out Lemos gets out of position every time she throws. That also is true. Ghost says Watterson hit Lemos with a left hand and a right side kick. Good thing Watterson has no power. Yeah, those were good shots. So, I mean, Lemos obviously has a pretty good killer instinct, has power. We've seen that already. Didn't obviously stun or stagger Watterson or anything, but she knows how to find the finish. Has some good jiu-jitsu. And yeah, she does. She's got good power. Obviously not the most refined striker in the division, but a good one. A good one for sure. Good enough, obviously. As James says, is Watterson washed? So I always kind of hate to say that a fighter is washed unless it's like blatantly obvious. And I mean, you look at who Watterson's also fighting. So right there, automatically, I would say no, because you look at who she's been fighting. Like unless she starts getting beat by some serious up and comers, like let's say, I don't know, what's a good example? Let's say just she came right to mind. Cheyenne Vlismas did this to Watterson. Then you could probably make a case there, but I wouldn't say so yet. I don't think. I think obviously she's not one of the best anymore, and it's never like she was top 5 at strawweight. That's never been a thing. But she's certainly on the back end of her career. And I wouldn't be surprised if this was her last fight. I would not at all be surprised. But I think we've 100% seen the best of her at this point, James, and the best of her very well may have been at atom weights. Actually, I would probably say it was. So she was always going to have an uphill climb at 115. One of those fighters who got hurt by not having that option to stay at 105. So yeah. And Rain asks, what do we think of Lemos tactically? Well, as Ghost has pointed out, like on the feet, and I've kind of said this too, she's nothing spectacular in terms of her technique and whatnot. Like you look at the elite strikers of the division, the Whaleys, the Roses, the Marinas, Joanna, not anymore, Xiaonan, like they're all better for sure than her in terms of their tactics and fundamentals, technique, all that. But she's got the power edge on. I don't know if she's got a power edge over, but she's like right there. I don't know if she's probably not more powerful than Andrade, but she's definitely one of the hardest hitters in the division. No doubt about it. I don't know how I'd rank them necessarily, but she's hurting people. She's knocked down everybody except for Watterson now and then Andrade, but all of her fights up until then, she's scored knockdowns in her fights. So that's a good sign there. But in terms of her grappling, though, I mean, that was probably the most impressive stuff from her in this fight, technically. And like I said, I really enjoyed all the grappling exchanges in this fight. And Cinder says, when did Watterson add the Gomez to her last name? Right before this fight. I mean, she's been married for years now, but yeah, they hyphened her before this one. And Rue says, where do you rank Lemos? Middle of the pack, elite, or low end of top 15? So I update my rankings after every event, Rue, and I have her, I think she's at 10 for me right now. Here, let me just pull it up real quick just to make sure. It's around there. It is around there. 10 or 9. Actually, I don't even need to look. I know it. She's 10 or 9. But I don't know if I would ever say someone right there is elite, but I wouldn't say she's middle of the pack either. Like she's a very solid top 10. And she can continue to climb again because of her finishing abilities, right? Like she doesn't have to be the most refined striker necessarily, but like against somebody like Mackenzie Dern, she could 100% beat her, I think. Of course, you always got to be careful on the ground, but there are matchups that she can have and win to get into that top 5 for sure. And I wouldn't be surprised if she gets there someday. So she's definitely a very good strawweight, no doubt about it. As Go says, it's not even being spectacular. It's about messing with the opponent's expectations, which only 2 people in 115 can do. Only Whaley and Rose, used to be Joanna, are good at messing with people's expectations. Yeah, making people think one thing and then changing it up. That's a good point. Yeah, they have a great level of versatility with their approaches. Like you look at the other elites, like I mentioned already, Xiaonan and Marina, you expect them just to strike with you, and they aren't really going to offer any threats of takedowns and whatnot. And that's kind of the case for Dern as well. Obviously, you know exactly what to expect from her. Even though she tries to strike, you know that she's always going to want it on the ground. So Jimmy says Watterson had a good fight with Penne and Hill, but that was it. Yeah, I mean, the Penne fight, I've told you guys, one of the greatest fights of all time, undeniably. I mean, my God, that fight was so amazing. And the Hill fight was very good too. Yeah. And I do think she rightfully won that one. I know that's a controversial take, but yeah. Marcus, good to see you. Says, I think Lemos is very good. She looks good in there. Yeah. I mean, like I said, this was a pretty fine performance from her. Exactly what she needed. And Rain says, upon Ghost request, I watched the in-away fight. She gets back to Paisley and not good in the clinch. Well, that was several fights ago, though, Rain. Like, we need to see it happen again, how she deals with it again. That was too long ago, I think, to still say that's a problem. Like, Could be, right? But we need to know. And we didn't get to find out in this one, which sucks. But yeah. And Go says he doesn't put Marina and Zhao on as elite strikers. They do the same thing and don't adapt to their opponent. They have good mechanics, but not tricky. Well, like I'm saying here, elite for the division for sure. Maybe not in terms of whatever you're looking for specifically, Ghost, but they're definitely elite at strawweight when you look at no one else really is giving them problems aside from each other. Like no one else has been able to handle them so far in those departments. So when you're better than everybody else, that automatically makes you elite in the division. And I mean, compare, of course, to who you've been fighting. And the same goes for the Whaley and the Roses and the Joannas, even though Joanna's gone now. So I should probably stop mentioning her. But if you're beating everybody else in the division, but with this one thing, that makes you elite in that area, comparatively speaking, maybe not compared to other people outside of it, but for what you're up against. Yes. And Rain says Andrade handled her in the clinch. Well, okay, that's a fair point. So, but that is also Andrade. So, like, she's very good at doing that. But yeah, no, I'm not saying it's not a problem, but I don't think, to base it fully off of the Inoue fight is, yeah, fully fair. But yeah, that's I'm glad you mentioned that. Obviously, that's where the fight ended. She finished her in the clinch. And goes, it's fair play, strawweight, but for striking. Yeah, see, I mean, that's what I'm getting at. But yeah, good for Lemos. I like her. She's a fun fighter to watch, I would say. Can't beat someone who's going out there and getting the job done like she has been doing for the most part, all but one fight, right? So curious to see what is next for her. Not quite sure when you look at the options right now. Hey, I wouldn't be, well, it depends. I think Marina Rose is probably most likely, but I wouldn't hate Rose versus Lemos. It's probably not going to happen, but I wouldn't hate that. Do Tisha versus Lemos is probably most realistic. I'm going to bet on that one. We'll see Tisha versus Lemos next, and then probably Rose Marina, Whaley Carla. You know how it goes. That's what I'm thinking. Oh, Jen says Verna versus Lemos, though. Okay, yeah. I mean, I wouldn't be mad at that either. That's a fun fight. Yeah. I was just thinking more of them probably wanting to have her fight up, and I know for sure she's going to want to fight up. No offense to Verna, but yeah, I love that for sure. Love Verna, so I like it. Everyone's on board with that. So we got some options here. That's strawweight, but all right, then we'll move on to the fight they got moved to this card. Lauren Murphy defeated Miesha Tate via unanimous decision, 30-27s from 2 judges, and then a 29-28. Very, very curious to hear what you guys thought about this fight, because I watched this without commentary, and I thought it was pretty enjoyable and fairly competitive. Like, I think that Lauren won, but I don't know if I think it was fairly close, like to the point where I don't want to say I wouldn't be mad if Miesha won, but I think rounds 1 and 3, round 2 was, I think, Lauren's best round for sure. But 1 and 3, I think Miesha did good enough to where you could try to argue it. I don't know if I'd agree, but I mean, and the numbers support it, but obviously that doesn't tell the whole story. But I thought this was a pretty fun fight. Miesha struggled here a little bit with, striking into her grappling and her wrestling and having her way there as she wanted, just kind of charged in and was eating some knees for it. Didn't taste too good, I'm sure. Got some elbows. Murphy did very good there. Kind of jabbed her up a bit. And I mean, Miesha's jab was very nice too in this fight. But the problem was she was just kind of walking directly into most of the shots, especially in that third round. I would assume that she knew she was kind of feeling down and really came after it, but her defense was just kind of non-existent. And that felt somewhat the issue against Ketlin as well. So kind of problematic, obviously, but she didn't slow down. I mean, I think that aside from her defensive issues, Misha looked pretty all right for the most part. Again, found some trouble there setting up her takedowns as good as she would have liked, and that's just a compliment to Lauren, I think, doing good there. But I thought this was a pretty fun fight, kind of all over the place, and yeah, with Misha, you know, she's never going to give up and keeps on going. Very, very tough. My goodness, her eye was jacked up after this fight, but hey, kind of settles things in terms of any possible jumping over people. Like, you guys know, Misha's one of my favorites of all time. She really helped me believe that the women should be fighting back in the day, which is always funny for me to admit and say that I was on the fence about it. But her fight with Julie Kedzie made me be like, all right, let's get them in the UFC. So it's a bummer for me as a fan to see Misha lose, for sure. But in terms of the order of the flyweight division, justice or order is restored a little bit, and the actual contenders will get to shake out now. The Grassos, the Furos, and what have you. Santos is very happy too, I'm sure. Valentina might be a little upset, but oh well. So Lauren Murphy, there you go. There you go. Rue says he thinks that both seem slow. Interesting. I think they seemed pretty fine there, pace-wise. Pace, I thought it was a pretty high pace. And like I said, I didn't have commentary or audio when I was watching this, but don't know how much that will play an effect for some people. So Marcus says Murphy was landing strikes. Yeah, she was landing practically at will. I mean, what do we got here? She was 128 of 211. Yeah, that's a pretty good rate. And I mean, Misha's isn't too far off. I mean, more so, but yeah, Murphy was pretty accurate in this fight. Obviously. Sanchez is not going to lie. I didn't enjoy this. They did the thing Ghost hates where they circled and exchanged, then circled again. Well, just because Ghost hates it doesn't mean you have to, Cincho. Jeez, I mean, come on. And Nabash says, I don't know. I don't think you can give Misha around 2 or 3. No, I wasn't saying 2. She definitely lost 2. I was saying 1 or 3. 1 or 3. I could hear an argument. I'm not saying, you know, I think she lost as well. But hey, one of the judges gave her the 3rd round, actually, which I thought was surprising. I thought it would have been the first. If I had to pick one that I thought was maybe a little bit closer. But I don't know. Either way, it seemed like she thought she won right after the fight. But yeah. As he says, round 1. So yeah, see, we're on agreement there. And Ghost says slow elbows, but Murphy, and flaccid takedown attempts by Tate. Yeah, that they were tuned out after the first round. Tate was okay, 135, then a steep drop off. All right. Sammy, good to see you, my friend. The BTL champion of the world of MMA fighting. Very true. Karen is here too now. Did you see my support on BTL? Yes, I did. Says that was great. Chat was pretty toxic, but BTL was still fun. Well, thank you so much. And yeah, I know I saw a little bit there. I'll try to check it whenever I can. You know, try to stay focused. But yes, I did. So yeah, don't know. Yeah, it was. I think for Misha, she just kind of, once things didn't go her way early on, maybe threw the game plan out the window a little bit. I don't know. I don't know what to make quite so much of her going forward. Snabash says, I was surprised that Murphy had a strength advantage. I don't know if I would say she had a strength advantage. They seemed fairly even to me. I mean, obviously Murphy had some good control there and defended things very well. You know, 0 of 7 was Misha there, according to the stats, 2 of 6. But I mean, she had some good defensive moments at the same time. Obviously wasn't able to outmuscle her. So I feel like it was, I mean, if you were to give an edge to somebody, obviously it would be Murphy for being able to do that. But yeah, either way, good win for Lauren, that's for sure. Maybe biggest win of her career. Maybe. It's a big one. Big name, former champ. One of the greats. So yeah, congrats to Lucky Lauren. She found that 4-leaf clover before the fight. So not sure luck had much to do with it, but hey, you like those tie-ins. They're always fun, right? But anyway, as we move on here to the opener of the night, the debut of the Invicta strawweight champ, Emily Cote. She defeated Jessica Penne via unanimous decision, 29-28 on 2 cards, and then 30-27. So, you guys know I love Jessica Penne. Also quite adore Emily Cote. So this was a bittersweet one for me in terms of that and having somebody having to lose. But this fight was not close, in my opinion. I thought that it was a pretty clear 30-27 for Cote. Great performance once again. She's on fire. She's on a roll, man. And obviously the story of this fight was her completely chewing up the leg of Penne, the lead leg there with the outside leg kicks, some low calf ones there. Some great counters on display. Jessica really could not find her way into any grappling exchanges, which was the problem for her there. Had some attempts, obviously, several. But they clocked it at 8 total, so there you go. But just could not manage to. She had some success in the clinches, though. She did throw some good knees there to the body at times. But ultimately, this was the Cote show, and seemed like she could have got close to a finish. And I liked what DC was saying, I think, about switching up to, throw some head kicks in there, which she never really got to get off, unfortunately. But yeah, whenever somebody's so focused on that one limb you've been targeting down low or to the body, either one, mix it up, surprise them with something to the face. So Jessica Penne always been insanely tough, though. We know that. But hey, Emily Cote has arrived. A great addition to the UFC roster. We knew this. We know what she's capable of from Invicta. I thought this was a great performance. She looked great. Looked very good. And now she should be ranked, right? Because Penne was, 14? Actually, in the UFC rankings. And I already had her as my 15 worldwide. And speaking of Lemos earlier, that was reference to I do my rankings worldwide. So I had Cote at 15. I think I bumped her up just one spot, 14, because I didn't have Penne in there. But I mean, her streak continues. She's looking very good. Be curious to see. Very curious to see what they do with her next. Hopefully, another ranked opponent. That would seemingly make sense. Tisha would be a pretty big jump in terms of the rankings, but I would like that one. That could be fun. A lot of options, man. It's very cool. Very cool to see. So, Marcus says Cote was composed and athletic. Tangibles and intangibles looked good. Yes, Cote. That is one of the things I've been most impressed with her, specifically in her win before this against Elisa Zapatella, though. Like her composure and fight IQ, the patience, really. Like she's just championship level stuff. And obviously she was a champion, but takes her time, doesn't force anything, doesn't rush anything, which can be problematic in situations, right? But we haven't seen her really be down and need to force things just yet. Arguably, the Kanako fight would have been that one, but against someone like Kanako, who was going to give you issues with her wrestling and kind of nullify your ability to do that in a general sense, then it's going to be tougher. So against someone who's maybe doing better than her on the feet, we have yet to really see that to a certain extent. And I'm sure we'll see some tests as she continues, but Emily Cote is quite good. Gordina. Jamie says, what could Penne have done to avoid the low calf kick? Well, as they kind of mentioned on commentary too, stance switching, that is always very helpful. Check them, you know they're coming. She did not do a very good job of checking, kind of, did better later into the fight, but that is something Jessica definitely should have worked on. Try to time it, grab that, especially when you do want things on the ground. Close the distance, you name it. A lot of things she could have done that she very much did not do. And Nabash says Dakota fights like a veteran, very disciplined performance. Yeah, it definitely was. And I mean, she is not, I don't know, it feels weird to say she's a veteran, right? 27, 28 years old, but she has a great amount of experience. Fought in Bellator for the first half of her career at flyweight. And then she, went down to strawweight and has looked better than ever. And Makoto says low calf kicks were good. Yes, they sure were. And Go says Penne had successful teeping when Cote lands the calf kick. She probably should have done that throughout. He's answering Jimmy. Yeah, that is true. Yeah, the teeps were pretty good there. But yeah, ultimately it was the Emily Cote show. So curious to see what is next for both ladies, as I am a fan of both. And Ghost throws out here calf kick counters Jose Aldo. It's knee hinge and check by retracting your lead leg while pivoting your rear one. Watch Aldo versus Munoz, I'm assuming you mean. And Jin says, should Cote fight Lemos? Oh, well, I mean, she could. I don't think the UFC will want to go in that direction. I doubt that Lemos will too, especially after finishing Watterson of all people and in the co-main event slot. I would be very surprised. I think that, you guys mentioned Verna as well, which I do like that stylistically, and I like this one stylistically. That'd be great. I'm all for that. But in terms of how the UFC will think, and definitely Lemos, she's going to want to fight upwards. So I think Lemos versus Tisha might actually be most realistic. Maybe Hebas, depending on what she wants to do. Obviously, just lost at flyweight. The Amanda versus the Amanda show. I don't know. We'll see. And Ru says Cote versus Verna. You could do that as well. Former Invicta, another one. Penne was a former champ at atomweight, but this would be former strawweights going at it. You could do that. That wouldn't be crazy, depending on what exactly we'll see from Verna next. Yeah, there's so many options at strawweight, you guys. Like, I don't hate any of these matchups you're bringing up here. I mean, I do in terms of somebody having to lose. I don't like that part, but. And Jin says Dakota versus Frey. No, you can't do that one. She's those are opposite trajectories. Now you can't do that. That would be more of a favor to Jin, and not to say that Emily wouldn't take it, but that one doesn't make sense, I don't think. And Centro says, can Dakota be champion? I think it's still too early to say, but I've liked everything that we've seen from her at strawweight. Even in the Kanako loss, like, she did have some very good signs of defensive wrestling, and she's definitely worked on that since then. So I'm curious to see how she can do against another wrestler, and who knows, maybe we could see a Kanako rematch at some point, but I feel like it's too soon to say if she can be. I think it's certainly possible. Again, really liked what we've seen out of her, especially with the composure, like we talked about. But I don't know yet. I don't know yet, Centro. Liking what I'm seeing, though. As Ru says, is 115 women similar to 135 men's, where you can pick two names out of a hat and you get a good fight? Pretty much. I mean, the bantamweight division is just phenomenal. The best division in the world. Don't even think it's close. And you know that if you did watch BTL this past weekend. Very much love everything about the bantamweight division. And yeah, with strawweights, especially in like the top 15, top 20 range, I think you can say that over. Obviously, the lower you get, things get less exciting. But yeah, I think it's that's a good comparison. And Sammy says, does Emily get ranked after this? I would imagine so, because like we said, Penne was at 14, right? So it would only make sense. But all right. So that was UFC Long Island, you guys. Pretty wild event overall. I mean, Schnell versus Sumaderje. Oh my goodness. I cried watching that thing on rewatch. I mean, that second round was just so bananas, and the energy, it just gets to me. In that moment. Madness. And Go says, I agree with that, Drake. If you made all cards with 135 and 155, we never have a bad fight night. That would be very true. But yes, Jin says that was insane. It was completely ridiculous. I don't know. I mean, Schnell in terms of he didn't get knocked down like 5 times, but he got hurt, stunned like 5 times, which that's got to be about a record. I mean, my God, that was just ridiculous. So, whew. And then for him to finish it off the way he did, goodness. Flyweights, I tell you. And we'll get to the news and we'll speak of more flyweights, less exciting flyweights, but that's okay. Just to be perfectly honest, as everyone agrees, truly incredible fight. Yes, indeed. Sure was. And hopefully Sumaderje is all right. He was pretty messed up after that. But yes, so for the news cycle today, you guys, we'll breeze through it as we generally try to do. We'll kick things off here with a replacement, as Maria Agapova is out at UFC 277 later this month, 2 weeks from now, right? What was that? Next week, actually. I'm all over the place. Yes, should be next week. UFC 277 on July 30th. Agapova is out. Jocelyn Edwards now steps in to face Ji-Yeon Kim. So, I don't know. I don't know if this is better for Kim in terms of the matchup, honestly. Jocelyn Edwards, we've seen, has better cardio than Agapova, that's for sure. But obviously less dangerous in terms of finishing ability. And not that Kim is easily finished or anything. We know Firefist is very tough and has shown she has great potential, but just cannot capitalize on it. Despite many people thinking she was robbed in her last fight. Crazy one with Priscilla Cachoeira, where I think she robbed herself because she could have just taken her down. Every time we talk about Cachoeira, I got to mention it. But yeah, this should be a fight that majorly takes place on the feet still, as it would have against Agapova, I think. So I'm not sure if it's tougher for Kim or not. It is in certain ways and not in others. But yeah, not a terrible replacement. I mean, at this point in time, what you going to do? Can't ask for too much. Jocelyn Edwards, though, what a gamer. She's all about staying active and taking these opportunities. So good for her to jump in there and save the day for Kim. As we move on to the PFL announcing the playoff matchups. And obviously we're going to be looking at the lightweights here specifically. At least this is, yes, the semifinals, because the winners will go on to the finals later in the year. I don't think they announced where they're doing the finals just yet, but these will be in London, as Kayla Harrison versus Martina Yendrova is headlining. And oh, look at that. Tapology does the little bracket thing now. I didn't notice that. That's fun. So big opportunity here for Yendrova. And I mean, obviously winner goes to the finals. So what bigger opportunity can you have? But it's practically her title fight, taking on Kayla, who is the one expected to win as always. Striker grappler matchup. Martina is a legitimate kickboxer. Problem is, don't get touched and taken down. That's always the case with Kayla. But see what you can land on the feet. She has a very clear advantage there. So that makes it interesting in that regard. But we typically know how it'll go down. And then we get the Pacheco versus Kolesnik rematch, which, if you guys remember that one from last year, was one of the most ridiculous head-snapping knockouts you'll ever see, as Kolesnik just blind aggression ran in there. Hopefully we'll have learned from that in this one and not let it happen again. But Pacheco obviously should be favored here. Very likely, if you were to bet, that we will see Pacheco Harrison 3 in the finals, which is actually a pretty interesting trilogy, all things considered. Yes, Pacheco lost 2 unanimous decisions the first time, but she's looked pretty darn good since then. And yeah, as great of a story as it would be for Kolesnik to get in the finals alone, if anyone else wins it aside from Kayla, that's a pretty great story, obviously. But yeah, I just don't really see that happening. And then that's right, we got Dakota Ditcheva versus Hasna Gaber at 125. So I know that PFL announced some stuff. I just kind of skimmed over it, but they're gonna do their European series now or whatever. And Dakota, I think, well, I would imagine both of them, depending, I guess, will be a part of new tournaments, right? So I would imagine they're doing flyweights. I probably should read up on what is going down, but that's exciting to see. And Ditcheva, very good prospect, obviously 5-0 there. So yeah, that's cool to see. PFL finally adding more divisions for the women. Like, geez, where you been? And even bantamweights right there. That's great, obviously, because they only go down to featherweight right now until this event, I guess. So yeah, that's good. Good news there for sure. The more opportunities, the merrier, as we say. But all right, then we continue onward with some shakeups. Actually, all the news today, aside from that one, aside from what we just did right there with the PFL, everything is replacements. So we move on to the strawweight division, back to the strawweight division. Estela Nunez is out. So Yasmin Yaraguay, making her debut, will now fight, I believe it's also Yasmin Lucindo at UFC San Diego on August 13th. So another debutante. I am unfamiliar with Lucindo, unfortunately. Sorry to her, but we'll get familiar here at UFC San Diego. So, hey, that is, double jitters action here potentially. But Yaraguay, obviously a very talented prospect, undefeated. She was Combate champion, I think. If she wasn't, she at least made her name kind of there. But yeah, so there you go. That'll be UFC San Diego. Looking forward to her debut, and of course, looking forward to seeing Lucindo for the first time as well. So can't really complain about that one, as that card is on its way too. But yeah, and then we go back up to flyweight for the last order of business here in the new cycle, and this was announced yesterday. And was kind of a head scratcher, kind of a very odd development. How this happens, I don't know. And I can't wait to hear some explanations for what has happened. Unless it's just UFC ridiculousness. But Jessica Andrade is now out for her fight with Manon Fiorot at UFC Paris on September 3rd. And Caitlin Chookagian, the woman that Jessica Andrade replaced, is back in the fight. Like, what the hell is that? What is that? Jessica only came in because Caitlin came out. And now I think a medical issue, they said, for Jessica, and Caitlin's back in. So, like, why was she out at all? Why the hell was Caitlin Chookagian out in the first place? Someone make it make sense. Dana, you know what? I'm going to ask him next week because I will be in Vegas. So it's just very odd. Interesting matchup, though. We're back to square one. We've talked about this already, but still a big opportunity for Fiorot. Less danger involved in this one. Still a tricky matchup. A great test for her, but just weird. Just kind of a weird process to get here. I mean, she goes from training for Caitlin to training for Jessica, which is a completely different style, completely different, and then has to switch up back to it. She still has plenty of time. September 3rd here is when this is going down, but this still is super weird. I don't know what the fuck this is all about. But it's how they did it. So we'll close the news cycle out right there. Fitting. Very fitting, huh? Bizarre. Make it make sense, UFC. Please. Please. All right. So where are we? Let's catch up now. My goodness. Galactus, good to see you here. As I was at your live Q&A and I mentioned that Zhang is on PEDS. Why would you try to defend her after all the evidence you see, Drake? I don't remember you mentioning that, Galactus. But where's the evidence? I don't want to get into any ped discussion, but if there's no evidence, Galactus, if she hasn't tested positive, then there's no proof. That is the end of that. That's all that needs to be said. Unless you can show me something, then yeah. And I say that about everybody, every single person, Galactus. As suspicious as maybe some people will be, I know a lot of people were very upset at me for even talking to Ariane Carnelosi just because of them accusing her of doing PEDs. We have no proof. We have no proof. You can have your eye tests, what have you. Until you show me some hard evidence, there's no point in talking about it, especially when you're tested by USADA sometimes hours before your fights, like Alexander Volkanovski talked about before his rematch with Max Holloway. My goodness. And that was in Abu Dhabi. As Central says, did you see Weili training with Ji Yan? I am rooting for Firefist here. I don't know about you, Drake. Yes, I think I did. I don't know if I saw them like any training footage, but I saw that she was there and whatnot. So yeah, good for her. Good for her. And against Jocelyn, I don't really have a preference there who wins. I mean, it would be nice, I guess, to see Kim get some momentum going, but I don't really mind too much whoever wins that. As James says, I saw on Weili an IG story that her coaches and herself helped out Kim before she left for the US. Is the same situation as Kayla and Joanna were. Two training partners not suitable for the fight itself. Yeah, kinda. I mean, the size isn't as obviously big of a gap there, but yeah, a little bit. I can see the comparison there, James. Yeah. So let's see. Sharon, good to see you. And Citrus says, oh, you're going to ask Dana some questions. Ask him what he thought of Weili's performance, please. Everyone has been asking him about Joanna, and the winner has been overshadowed. I mean, that would be kind of random, Cintro. You know, everything's about timing here. Everything's about timing with these things. So, yeah. So, yeah. Maybe. We'll see. We'll see what the vibe is like. But Galactus, that's not evidence. It's not proof. Eye test, like I said, rapid improvement in a short amount of time, and she's in Thailand where steroid abuse is evident. Well, where's the proof of that? Where's the proof of that? And that's a bold claim, though. It's a bold claim with Carla beating Weili easy. Like I said, I think that she will do better than practically everyone is giving her credit for, but I believe it is definitely very hard to pick against Weili there. And I'm curious to see what the odds are going to be on that one. But yeah, I think Carla can obviously find success with her wrestling, but I don't necessarily think. Definitely won't be easy. And if it is going to be easy in one direction, it will be. And I mean, here's the thing too, Galactus, if you do think that she is doing all that stuff, then you shouldn't assume it would be easy for Carla. So you're kind of conflicting yourself there, my guy. But yeah. Here, Rain, I see you asking here about the pressure real quick. I'm just trying to do time management here. So if I kind of go over things, that is kind of why, because I see Ghost obviously said a whole bunch here. But here, I'll look through for you guys, just trying to manage the time a little bit as we've got 3 events here to go through. What'd you say? Pressure. Is pressure fighter not the pressure that one feels? As Ghost says, Rain, there are 2 types of pressure: direct pressure, indirect pressure. Is running through a straight line. Indirect pressure is using the fighter's presence as a threat of strikes. Okay. Direct pressure example is Jessica Andrade. Yep, there. That's one of the best ones you can use. Indirect would be examples of Weili. Izzy leads to get on the counter. Volkanovski and Peter Yan, highest exponent of this concept. Yeah, yeah, the indirect pressure is a very interesting concept, I think. I do agree with Ghost, but like when you just think of in a traditional general sense, obviously it's fighters like Jessica Andrade or Habib, you know, people who smother you and do not let you breathe, just get in your face. And so I mean, calling the stuff that, Adesanya and Whaley do pressure at all feels very weird. Obviously, get what he's saying, indirect and, working to counter. It doesn't feel like pressure, right? It's kind of a different chess match type of pressure, but yeah. So, all right, Galactus. I already told you I don't care anymore. We're not talking about that stuff because I need the proof, my man. If you haven't failed, then you haven't failed. So we'll move on to the Invicta FC 48 preview here as we get close to the end of the show. All right. Okay, now you're just making stuff up. But Invicta FC 48 going down on Wednesday in Colorado. Which is great. You guys know how excited I am that this card is not going to be in California. Not California. I don't know why I said that. Kansas City. Commission's awful there. They need to move around as much as they can. So very excited just for that simple fact for this card. And in the main event, we have the bantamweight title on the line between Tanisha Tennant and Olga Rubin. Tennant, it has been quite a while since we've seen the champ. And Olga Rubin here making her debut in Invicta. Title shot right out the gate. Former featherweight title challenger in Bellator. So, big opportunity for her right away. And at bantamweight, where she is, I think she's undefeated still. Just 2 fights, 2-0 since leaving Bellator. But Tennant, she looked very, very good in her title win there against Lisa Versosa. But that was definitely over a year ago now at this point, right? So she's got some good hands, good striking. Obviously, she was the one on the wrong end of the Danielle Wolf fight, wasn't she? Which I know people didn't quite agree with, and that's a whole different thing in itself at featherweight. But that'll be interesting to see. Toledo Bernardo got a change up, but she's taking on Yana Gadelia now. Don't believe there's any relation to Claudia. Liana Perozi is back against Christina Williams. That fight is going to be very fun. Perozi looked very good, very sharp in her last fight with Janessa Moranjan. Got the win in that one. Striking very nicely. Very young prospect. Very versatile. Isis Verbeek is returning. It's Melissa Odessa Parker. Amber Leibrock also back in Invicta. Same with Morgan Fryer. Autumn Norton and Maria Juszczyk, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. So there's a good amount to like here. We got 7 fights. Invicta typically with the 6 seems like the hard number they like to go for, but we'll take the 7. Not going to exactly go through all of these fully because we'll be here all day. But Amber Leibrock, obviously a notable name, looking to get back in the win column herself. Had a rough stretch there at the end of the Bellator run. And who knows, she could always go back. But best friends with a friend of the show, Jessie Jess. So she will be there. I don't know if she will be in the corner necessarily, but she will be there for Amber. And, very long and lengthy featherweight she is. We'll look to utilize that. Whereas Morgan Fryer is probably going to want to get this to the ground and make some exploitations, even though I'm sure Amber has been working on a lot of stuff. I don't remember when her last fight was. It feels like it's been a while since we've seen her. But I think the fight that is most likely to be the fight of the night on this card. I do like the main event a lot, but Perozi versus Christina Williams, 2 very solid strikers there. Perozi does have some good grappling too, but another former Bellator fighter, Christina Williams, with her kickboxing background. I'll never forget what she did to Heather Hardy. My goodness. In this matchup here, should be very fun. Bernardo, see what she can do. Didn't have a great UFC run either. She welcomes Gadelia, who I'm not familiar with, admittedly, but that is always more kind of exciting to learn about those people. And with Rubin versus Tennant, I think that if Tanisha can continue to build off of especially the last performance, I mean, my goodness, she looks so great there. Surprisingly, Lisa got lucky there at the end of, I think it was the second round when Tennant almost put her away. Like she got some clean strikes with her punches specifically, good boxing on her, is developing some power a bit, it seems. And against Olga, I don't know if I want to say she's got body sensitivity there, but we saw her obviously get finished by Julia Budd with some good body shots. So just kind of mix it up against someone like Rubin, even though she'll probably come at her, try and get a hold of her. But we got 5 rounds to work, and we got open scoring. We'll see how that all plays out. But I know that Serena De Jesus, a past co-host of this show, filled in for me that one time. She'll be watching very closely, and she is quite upset that she's not in this fight. So, yeah, but a solid card overall, and I love, again, that this is in Colorado. As Central says, will Colorado have better judges? Literally anywhere on the planet will have better judges than Kansas City Centro, so that's exciting. But Rue asking who is Tennant and what is she good at? Like I said, she's probably best described for her boxing. Yeah, majorly a striker, I would say, for sure. And she says, what's your opinion on the UFC not showing Dakota's Invicta highlights like the Taylor KO? Much thanks to Dakota for that. Yeah, I mean, I tweeted about that. That was ridiculous. I was like, how do you not show that? But then someone pointed out to me that it's probably because they didn't have or didn't get the rights to use it, because that actually happened post Fight Pass. So, that fight that was post Invicta being on Fight Pass. So they didn't have that kind of deal in place or the access. And surely they could have asked, and Invicta probably, why not let them use it? But they didn't have it directly available. So I was like, okay, that makes total sense. But like, how do you drop the ball with that? They showed the other ones, but not that one, or the Zapatella one. So that makes total sense why they weren't there, because the Fight Pass thing. Azur says, is Invicta a good place for a former UFC fighter to go to boost one's highlight reel? Potentially, kind of depends. I mean, we have seen that happen before. I mean, Angela Hill is probably the best case of it, where she, her first run with the UFC after the Ultimate Fighter 20, went to Invicta, became champ, looked very good there, then came on back. But it doesn't always work out. Like, we got Juliana Lima in there now. Mallory Martin was supposed to be on this card, right? And then I believe it was the Odessa Parker Verbeek fight. I don't remember which one necessarily, but and she was also in Invicta in the past too. But Juliana Lima, like I said, we've seen some go there, and it's been a mixed bag, I think. As Mary says, hi Drake, I saw a live chat with Whaley on Weibo with the Leech, and she said she's excited for her next fight because it's in the works, but she can't say any details of where. Do you think it's Carla? I asked her, but she said to stay tuned. Well, of course, yeah, she's not going to just straight out tell you, Mary, unfortunately. But yeah, I would imagine it would have to be. I would assume so. I would definitely assume so. And Ghost says, we have Serena on anytime. We asked her about technical stuff, and she's a wealth of info. I could try if you guys want me to try and get her back on. Of course, I wasn't there on that episode, but seemed like she really enjoyed it. It seemed like you guys enjoyed it too, so I could definitely see about that. Justin says he also saw the tweet, so that's why I asked. All right, fair enough, yeah. And Jeff says, hi, good to see you. Where can I watch this Invicta show? Should be on YouTube. Should be on YouTube, you guys. I'm pretty sure. Let me see if the poster says anything. The last couple have been, so I don't know why this one wouldn't be. I know that MMA Junkie actually was showing them as well, but yeah, there's no reason I don't think it wouldn't be on YouTube. So yeah, it should be on Invicta's channel actually. But Yuna says, hello, I can't stay for long, but we'll watch later. You are great, Drake, and the BSL champion. Thank you so much, Yuna. That is right. Champing it up over here. But yes, for sure. And if it's not, I apologize. You can check the website. But yeah, I feel pretty good saying nothing has changed in regards to Invicta not being on YouTube. They're pretty good at simulcasting and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Always fun there. And I think I'll do play-by-play this week on MMA Mania for it, as some people suggested. So You can hang out in there if you want to. So James says, love Serena, so smart. All right, there you go. Yeah, she definitely is a well-educated member of the community. No doubt about it. So hopefully it'd be fun to see her against the winner. I think that'd be fair. So let's go to Bellator now. 283 in Tacoma, Washington this Friday. Just one fight. Just one fight, but pretty good one. As at flyweight, a former Invicta champ, one of the best flyweights of all time, Vanessa Porto takes on Vita Ortega in a pretty important matchup for the rankings here. I don't know exactly where they are put in the Bellator ranks specifically. Vida, I know, is a little bit higher, but both coming off of one-win streaks, if you can call one win a streak, as Vanessa had that loss to the now champ Liz Carmouche in her debut. Bit of a bummer there for her. And then I had the split against Joanny, which I didn't agree with. And I hate to say that because I love Vanessa Porto. But yeah, I thought that Joanny won that one. And then Vida, her last time out, got the majority over Desiree Yanez. Man, that was a year and 2 months ago now. Wow, where has she been? I mean, both of them haven't fought in a good while. Don't know what Porto's been up to. She was staying in the States a little bit for a while around that time. And then Vida, yeah, I don't know what's been going on with her, but that has been a while. That was when WMA Today was still a thing. My goodness. So yeah, looking forward to this fight. Vita Ortega, one of the scrappiest scrappers at flyweight, if we're going to be completely honest. Very well-rounded, very nasty in the clinch. Loves to make a fight dirty. Can box pretty well, has some all right kicks. Against Vanessa Porto, though, one of the most well-rounded fighters you'll ever see in the flyweight division. Can really do it all. I think where this fight can be most interesting is in those clinch exchanges for sure. And to see who has a strength advantage, which I would imagine would be Vanessa Porto, because my goodness, she has just always been a very, very strong individual here. And kind of surprising, I guess. The heights there, 5. I never realized Vanessa was actually that short. That's kind of crazy. I wonder if that's accurate. 5'4" to 5'2". That seems off to me. And then the reach, 64 to 64 and a half, same thing. And you know what, you guys, I actually missed some news now that I think about it. So I'll mention this real quick. And I'm so sorry that this wasn't on the docket here, but I got to mention that Karina Rodriguez, the current flyweight champ of Invicta, she also got signed to Bellator too. So she's in this mix as well. Big congratulations to Karina, who is a past opponent of Vanessa's, right? That was her second fight as champion. Yeah, big congrats to Karina. Great addition. UFC's just letting Bellator swoop up the Invicta champs. Kind of ridiculous and crazy, but yeah, I'm sorry to Karina for not highlighting that specifically in the news cycle. I was very aware of it, but I forgot to add it. So sorry to her. But yeah, that great news, great signing. And so yeah, sidetracked there a little bit. But for this fight again, Vanessa Porto, I think, would probably be in her best case to use Vita's strengths to her advantage. And, you know, when she comes in and likely puts on the pressure, as we were talking about earlier, because Vanessa's pretty comfortable really going wherever fights go. As Vida comes to her, try and counter off of that and look to take her to the ground. And if she can utilize her wrestling in this fight, I think would probably, I mean, obviously make things easier if she can do that. But, you know, Vita's just very aggressive and very durable. But, you know, we've seen in the past where she has been controlled in some situations. And remember, she got finished on the ground against Alima. That nasty thumping elbow. I'll never forget the sound of that. Sitting cage side. It sounded like a hammer on wood or something. Like, it was just crazy. Split her right down the middle of her face. If Vanessa could maybe try and replicate something like that, wouldn't be a terrible idea. And yes, I know that fight was a good while ago. Was it right there? Man, Vida just has not been very active, has she? So, hey, maybe that could play a factor too. Not that Vanessa's been much more active, but a decent a slight bit. Always in shape, always ready to go, though. So I love me some Vanessa Porto. So yeah. And Rue says, winner gets Kana. I mean, they could. They could. I guess I wouldn't hate that, but Kana wants her title shot, man. Bellator going to go to Japan at the end of the year. Depends on if Bellator wants to run back Carmouche and Velasquez, but you could do Kana versus Carmouche too in Japan. That'd be pretty sick. That'd be pretty sweet. We'll see. I don't know if it seems too quick, obviously, but she had that great win over Keyholtz. I don't know. Craig says, hi, Drake. Much love from the UK. Good to see you as well, Craig. Thank you. Thanks for tuning in, man. Jen says, should we expect a great scrap with Ortega? I'm assuming you mean there with the A. But yeah, I mean, like I said, she always brings it. She is one of the scrappiest scrappers out there, as I said. And Sammy, oh, you're too kind. There's no worries about in the news. Very, very kind, man. Very, very kind. I just feel bad for Karina. You know, I like to highlight that kind of stuff. So, because Karina's great. She is really one of the better ones out there. And Rain says, will this fight be chaos? Porto versus Ortega, kind of like the Stolyarenko fight from 2020. Ooh, I mean, that's a high bar to set there, Rain. I mean, there's potential for that, but I don't know. Vanessa Porto is never generally in fights that are that crazy. You know, she's very good at controlling and preventing that from happening just with her skill set and nullifying chaos. You know what I mean? So like Ortega very well could bring that storm to her, but then she's just good of kind of shutting it down, whether it's with, you know, her counter strikes to get respect out of her opponents, or, you know, grappling and getting a hold of somebody. But and I mean, she's got some comebacks on her record too. You know, I always think of that Milana Dudaeva one, which is just kind of crazy to think of. I mean, it's happened to Dudaeva many times, but where Dudaeva was actually winning that fight, you know, doing very well against Porto. And then at the end, middle of the third round, I think it was definitely the third round, but middle or not, don't remember. But Porto came back and finished her like never out of it. Championship spirit for sure. As Rue says, why are some fighters prone to chaotic exchanges like Vida? It's just kind of who they are sometimes, I think, you know, like Vita Ortega. She's just kind of got that mentality and that fighting spirit in her blood, I think. You know, that's the best way I can describe it for some people. I mean, because it's more of a mentality thing, right? It's not necessarily the style. It's what they want to do in a way, or they just get so wrapped up in the moment. As Mary says, what is your opinion on foreign fighters training in the U.S. away from their family, like Jingliang Lee, the Leech? It seems hard on them, but they get good training. Yeah, I mean, that's you pretty much nailed it. It is definitely a difficult thing to do, to be away from everybody like that. But if you want to find whatever is best for you and works, all that kind of thing, sometimes that's the way to go, and it's can pay off, as we've seen with Leech. You know, great win there, and obviously Weili's done that plenty. Zhao Nan's been doing it lately. I mean, a lot of the Chinese fighters have been leaving home. I don't think Liang Na did recently, and maybe she should, unfortunately. But yeah, and Meng Bo and Wu Yanan, they've been hanging out. Jackson Wink, living in Vegas, I think, going back and forth between those places. But yeah, a lot of the Chinese fighters getting out. Song Yadong, I mean, there's so many these days. And Jin says, what's your thoughts on the double standard of MMA media? I need to be a little bit more specific there, Jin, but it is what it is. Just from a general sense, I don't know how to answer that so vaguely. But that is Bellator 283, though. Good stuff there. Good fun card. Very much looking forward to it. As we get ready to wrap up with UFC London, just 2 fights. Excuse me. Good fun last time in London for the UFC. We'll see if they can replicate that same atmosphere, which shouldn't be too hard. They tried their best to bring all the same faces back for the most part, at least the winners. Patty, Tom Aspinall, And one of the individuals we will be talking about here momentarily, you know exactly who I'm talking about. But first, we have a fight. Well, both of these fights are flyweight. We have a fight where potentially loser goes home, depending, especially for one of them, Victoria Leonardo versus Mandy Boehm. We have Bellator and Invicta alums squaring off in this one. Mandy, former Bellator fighter, and Victoria, a former Invicta fighter. So a loss here for Victoria Leonardo would be 3 in a row. Still very surprised, and I have nothing against Victoria Leonardo, but very surprised she got the contract off of Contender Series. Thought it was much too soon, and what do you know, it kind of has been. I mean, yes, she's taken on two very, very good opponents there in Gatto and Furo. So someone like Mandy Boehm, more her speed, but Mandy, the rightful favorite. And again, Mandy's UFC debut against Lipski, which was a great performance by Lipski, but more so, I think, as much as I love Lipski as well, it was more of a shitty performance from Mandy than it was a great performance from Lipski, because for some reason, I mean, just the game plan in that one was horrendous from Mandy Boehm. Like, not just because of Lipski being not a great defensive grappler. We know her takedown defense is not very good at all, unfortunately. But Mandy Boehm has shown that she's been very good on the ground. She's got great top control, can beat people up, solid wrestling. Didn't really even try to do that against Lipski, so that was just not great to see. She should get back to those roots here in this fight with Leonardo, but even on the feet, she should probably be fine too. For the most part, I mean, Victoria Leonardo to me has always been one of those fighters who is too well-rounded to a fault. Like we talk about being good at everything, but not great at one thing. I think she's kind of the definition of that, in my opinion. Even though I'd probably say that her striking is probably weaker than her grappling. She likes to lean on it a lot, but we've seen her get beat up in a lot of situations too. Of course, she's fought very good competition though, and when you do look in these losses, Maren Blanchfield, Furo, and Gatto. So she's kind of losing to people she should be losing to. Beat Liz Tracy there. So that was a good win at the time for sure. Chelsea Hackett in the Contender Series one, which little green there is Chelsea Hackett. And kind of insane the odds that were on that one. So people made plenty of money off of Leonardo, and she pretty much got in the UFC completely off of stopping that hype, right? So that's a bummer in that regard, but congrats to her. And back against the wall. So, I'm all about those situations, motivating people and making them more dangerous. Very well could be the case here. If she can, find a way to get the better of Boehm on the feet, preferably, I would imagine, because if Mandy can make the adjustments off of her first career loss, you would like to see that, and you would kind of expect to see that. And you look at the reach advantages here, height, not so much, but man, 70 to 64, that's a good bit there. Mandy's quite a long fighter. Use that to your advantage if you can. So I think the odds are just right here. I think that's perfect. I really do. I think that is just fine and dandy. So yeah. James says, Melissa Gatto, like Joe Gatto, of course. So you're a fan. Excuse me. Dry throat real quick. Comes with the territory. As James says, are you a fan of Joe Gatto? Gatto, even though you are a cat person, he has like 50 dogs. Yeah, of course. Joe's hilarious. It's a great dude. And yes, I am a cat person for sure. And he says, Gato, yes, it does mean cat in Spanish. That is true. I did know that. El Gato, the cat. And Rain says, doing everything kind of like Demetrius Johnson. Well, I mean, not necessarily. I mean, yes, I know what you mean. But I said somebody who can do everything good, but not one thing, does nothing great. Demetrius Johnson does everything great. And of course, maybe he has some better strengths in certain areas. But yeah, I wouldn't make that comparison, Rain, but I get what you're getting at. And Central says, you said no shame in that loss with Gatto. Does that saying apply to Lemos versus Watterson Gomez? Yeah, a little bit. Not quite the same. Because you also got to look at where the fighters are in their careers as well, right? So Watterson has fought the best of the best, who's who, you name it. She's fought practically everybody at this point, whereas Victoria Leonardo still kind of clearly building things up, figuring out her career, trying to make a name for herself, right? So, and you see against these opponents who are at a quicker trajectory or higher skill level than them, quicker, if that makes sense. So I wouldn't say it quite applies because we've already seen Watterson tested, and she has the capabilities of, we've seen that she's had capabilities of beating people like Lemos in the past. You know what I mean? Whereas with Leonardo, we haven't seen that yet. And those people she lost to, Gatto, for example, have just been better than her throughout their entire career. So that's kind of how I read that one. But yeah, that is the first of two fights that we'll be talking about here. So we'll take that off for a brief moment as James goes back to well, we'll get Central out of the way here. As he says, he's curious, what are some no shame in that loss fighter examples? Well, I mean, like I just said, practically all of Victoria Leonardo's, the last three, it was Gatto, Fierro, Blanchfield. Like, again, these are all fighters who are better than Leonardo, obviously. And you kind of knew that going in, but they've proved it since then, right? It's really about hindsight, Centro. That's pretty much the whole thing about it here. Whereas with Boehm versus Lipsky, for example, not so much, because they're kind of at that same point in their careers, that same level. At least you would have, that's what it looked like and whatnot. So I think that doesn't quite apply there. But with all three of Leonardo's last three losses, those were fights she was supposed to lose, and she did. So no shame in that. That's what was expected. But of course, I mean, from their perspective, there's definitely, they don't want to feel that way or whatever. But you know what I mean. So it's kind of a big hindsight thing, Centro. That's the best way I can kind of describe that. As where were we now? Jin says an example of double standards, where he says Carla gets attacked by haters and MMA junkie protects her. Weili gets attacked by racist people and no one defends her, even when she was champ. And don't get me started on the human rights thing because none of that is Weili's fault. Very true. Well, you specifically mentioned an outlet there protecting Carla, which I'm not so sure about that. If you could show specifics, I mean, if just doing an interview with somebody, I wouldn't say is protecting, unless you're going out there and making certain, I don't know, justifications or whatever you want to say. But we've talked about this before, Jen. I don't know if you were here or not, but when it comes to that kind of stuff, racially charged issues and whatnot, especially in this day and age, a lot of figures, media people, whatnot, don't like to get involved in politics. I've told you I don't like to do that. I cannot stand politics. I'm not at all a fan of that stuff and don't really care for it. So I don't ever try to get into it. I mean, aside from just stating what seems obvious in terms of rights and human rights, whatever it may be, like that's nothing. But in terms of saying which side are you on, the left or the right, I'm not going to do that. And the people just typically tend to like to stay away from anything political because side picking, right? And I know you're mentioning the other stuff with Carla, but like Carla's stuff isn't broad and to that point of what Weili's was, right? Like no one's being racist towards Carla, right? Or she's not saying anything racist. If she was, surely it would be quite a different story. So yeah, double standards though are generally pretty annoying for sure. As Sammy says, why do they stack the cards when they go outside the Apex? To make it feel more special. There's more fans, bigger shows, traveling, all that stuff. And Albert Ashley Ruiz, Ruelas Cruz. Thank you for tuning in. But great point. Says it's a lose-lose when you go political. Yeah, he's got a fantastic point there. In terms of getting people on your side, really, it's a win in terms of eyeballs, though. Look at Colby. Look at Colby. It's kind of yeah, it's a very tricky situation, but I think that's a fair point to make. And Jin says, they said fans need to grow up and stop harassing Carla. No champion gets this much abuse as a champion. Well, that's not true. And sure, fair opinions to have, whatever you want. But no, I think Nico and Jermaine Durand got a great amount of abuse. That's for sure. And even Sterling got some very insane hatred after winning the title. But yeah, I mean, fans need to grow up and stop harassing everybody if we're going to be completely honest, you know? So anyway, let's finish up the show here as we talk about the last fight, Meatball Molly versus Hannah Goldie. Interesting fight and matchup, to say the least, as we talked about when it was announced. Really doesn't make any sense whatsoever, other than the fact that the UFC wants to give Molly another highlight reel performance, if we're going to be completely honest. And I have nothing against Hannah Goldie, but that's exactly what this is made out to be. Do not try and tell me otherwise. Like, I love me some Meatball Molly, but this is not the fight she should be having after a spinning back elbow knockout. One of the most ridiculous things you'll ever see against Luana Carolina, who, of course, is no one to write home about either. But after that performance, and to get you on a winning streak here, back on a winning streak, after beating Ji-Yeon Kim, who at least is a notable name to an extent, right? Like, this fight is absurd. And thankfully, the odds makers can see that. Minus 400 to my plus 310. Because Hannah Goldie is a strawweight. Yeah, I think she's fought at flyweight before, from what I remember. I don't remember if the last fight was there, but Emily Whitmire had strawweight issues. I think that one ended up being there, though. Hezabel Beta lost, got absolutely styled on in that one. Miranda Granger before that. The Callie Robbins win on Contender Series. Like, it's been a rough stretch in the UFC for Hannah Goldie. But she manages to get this London spot. Big opportunity for her to play spoiler, but she has an uphill climb, to say the least. Surprisingly pretty even here in the reach and height, though. Just a 1-inch reach advantage for Molly, who is a notoriously pretty stubby fighter. With her length, reach advantages, which she doesn't usually have. So it's like all tailor-made here. As Molly, quite another scrappy scrapper. If you wanted, that's going to be the theme of the day. Vita Ortega and Molly Mccann. If they were to fight, there would definitely be a tornado happening inside the cage. But Molly, it's funny with her, you know, when she was on her rise through Cage Warriors, we saw a lot of her wrestling utilization, and in the UFC, it's kind of not been the case whatsoever. She's striking a good bit more and, you know, able to make things dirty in there with the dirty boxing up against the cage or in clinch exchanges. And obviously on the exits, as she's throwing out spinning back elbows like a psychopath. Yeah, Molly's hands have improved nicely, and her strikes in tight have always been pretty good. And against Hannah Goldie, she's just going to be outsized. Like, Molly's going to be stronger than her. She's going to have better grappling. She's a better striker. Like, I really don't have too much to say about this, because I've already described how this is set up. And no offense to Goldie, she can, of course, pull off an upset. This is MMA. It's totally possible. She could catch her in a submission, but I think that's probably her best chance of winning. So she's going to want to have this on the ground, whether she's on bottom or on top. Probably preferably on top, as we have seen Molly submitted before, right? Like, Jillian Robertson got her, dominated her in that one. What was that? Molly's debut completely ruined that experience for Meatball. We've seen her susceptible. And even against Tyler Santos, who completely dominated her on the ground. Fritzen, I completely... Oh, was that Procopio? She changed her last name? That's odd. All right. There's more news for you. But yeah, like Molly's losses have come from fighters smothering her. I don't think Hannah Goldie's going to be able to do that. But she'll try, I'm sure. So yeah, I just hate the matchmaking of this entirely, pretty much. And Go says, it seemed like they want to give Meatball a highlight reel. That's exactly what I'm feeling as well. Drew says that it's objectively false. Champs get harassed all the time. Do we forget Alex the Great? Alexander Great after second. Oh, that's a great point too. Yep, forgot about that too. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, very good example. This is manipulative matchmaking to the highest degree. I mean, it could be worse. It could be a lot worse, but this is very manipulative indeed. This Ghost is not a fan. Rain says, I don't understand why the UFC wants to pad out someone's record like this. They want to make a star. They want to make a star, especially after last time. Great personality. She's getting more and more popular. And James says, what would have been a good matchup for Molly, you know, for even terms? Yeah, no, a fair question. I think, you know, honestly, somebody like JJ Aldrich, even with the Blanchfield loss, obviously the timings are kind of very similar there. So like they could have matched them instead. I would have been fine with that. Someone like JJ makes some good sense there. Maverick, if you're being super generous, I think would have been fine. Not super generous, but more generous in terms of potentially helping Molly in that regard. But somebody like that, you know, back like right below top 15 maybe, or if you are in the top 15 kind of range. So yeah. And Jimmy says, so how does one get favors like this from the UFC? What's the formula? Like how could Lauren Murphy get something like this? You would need a highlight like Molly got in her last fight, plus the interest in personality. I don't know. It's kind of a perfect storm to an extent, right? Like, and the international flavor helps a lot, right? Like that certain market behind you, like Lauren Murphy, to make the comparison example, you know, she's just an American flyweight, just kind of plain and simple. Best way to put it. And I mean, also not the best example because her career has already been pretty fruitful and long for to an extent, you know, former Invicta champ, fought for the UFC title, all that stuff. So this is what a great fight card. Wishing all the best. As long as both Ms. Goldie and Ms. Mccann give it their best, we can all be happy. Absolutely. Yeah. You hope to see a good fight, right? Like I don't expect that, unfortunately. And you guys know my thing for a good fight, right, is typically what makes a good fight is a competitive fight. You need it to be competitive to be a good fight. So an example, the best example I can say of this, which is insane to a lot of people probably, but like Diego Sanchez, Gilbert Melendez was not overall a good fight because most of that fight, if you remember, if you saw, this is dating myself a little bit, Gilbert Melendez was pretty much, he was winning that entire fight except for the knockdown in the third round, which definitely helped it be a good fight. But in terms of competitiveness, it was pretty much Gilbert Melendez having his way. It wasn't any debate about who won that fight. Entertaining as hell, very, very entertaining, but not a good fight in terms of what I kind of would say there. Like John Jones, Gustafsson won. Yuri Glover, if you want to look at light heavyweights, just for some reason coming to my mind. GSP, Johnny Hendricks 2, incredible. Like those close fights are often the very best ones for obvious reasons, right? When both people are having their best success, that's what you want. That's what you want. So hopefully we can get something like that. But that is UFC London, you guys. And that is another week in the books here for us with WMMA Mania. Lucky number 21, right? Yeah, 21 straight weeks going strong. All right. So with that in mind, we can wrap it on up. But thank you, Ghost. He agrees with me. Melendez versus Sanchez was horrendous. Not something to write home about. Not a good fight, but one of the most entertaining fights you will ever see. That is undeniable. And And Rain says, do you think the fan base would be better if we had more Alvin? 100%, for sure. Totally. That goes without saying. But anyway, you guys, don't forget, like, share, and subscribe if you haven't already. For some odd reason, hit that notification bell so you never miss a thing. Follow MMAmania.com on all the platforms we got. Follow me if you'd like, at DrakeRiggs_ on Twitter and Instagram if you're about that kind of thing. As for shameless plugs, did mention UFC 277 next week. Did speak with Juliana Pena. You guys know this. Spoke to the champ a couple weeks ago. That is still out and ready to be viewed here on the channel or the website. Sarah McMahon recently. Emily DeCote before the fight. But if you want to go back and watch it for whatever reason, you can do that too. Broad Horizon episode 17 is in the works. So we'll be out before Horizon 37. I think you guys will definitely enjoy that one. It's kind of a special we got going on here for episode 17. So that'll be out before that's next week as well. So it'll be very busy. And yeah, if you also didn't see the Tom Theocaris story, that one was a really heartfelt one for me. Please check that out. Got a lot of good feedback on it, which is always very nice. But yeah, that was a powerful one. Powerful one indeed. So rooting for him. Tom Theocaris, EFC middleweight. Check out that story on MMAmania.com. And the video is also on the channel here. So I think that will about do it for right now, you guys. Oh, and then of course, yeah, should be BTL on Thursday. Should be defending. Should be. Or Mike's ducking me already. We'll see. We will see. But until then, I'll either see you guys Thursday. Maybe we can do a pre-game Q&A again. We will see. Or just see you then. And then there will be next Monday, as always. So thanks so much, you guys. Appreciate it greatly. Have a happy, safe week and weekend.